shooting at a bar in Thousand Oaks, California. Jason Kaufman confirms his son was among the people killed in the bar massacre.
To me, his outgoing love for everybody, his outgoing love for his baseball team. He was a head umpire for the Camarillo Pony Baseball League. I mean, there were so many people that he touched, and now are going to be just as heartbroken as I am.
Ventura County Sheriff Sergeant Bill Hutton addressed the death of Sergeant Ron Helis in a briefing this morning.
Sergeant Ron Helis, he was a good friend, you know. He's a hero. He's a husband. He's a father. He's a friend. He's a partner, and we're all extremely devastated what transpired. He went into that bar protecting, serving others, and making sure everybody else can go home, and unfortunately he's not going home.
Police identified the gunman as 28-year-old Marine veteran Ian David Long. A Missouri grand jury has indicted the captain of a tourist duck boat that sank in a violent storm, killing 17 people on board. Here's Fox's Jeff Manasso.
51-year-old Kenneth McKee charged with 17 counts of misconduct and neglect as a boat captain in the deadly duck boat sinking near Branson in July.
Each of the 17 counts represents a life that was lost when Stretch Duck 7 sank while being piloted by Mr. McKee.
U.S. Attorney Tim Garrison, the accident happened during a surprise storm that produced near hurricane-force winds. The company that operated the boats suspended operations, also amid a $100 million lawsuit. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
The fact that Democrats have regained control of the House will change things, but what does it mean for Israel? That was a question today for Jan Markell of Understanding the Times. She was a guest today on AFR's Today's Issues program.
Well, you know, historically, both Republicans and Democrats have generally remained pretty pro-Israel. Things began to change, perhaps more under the Obama administration than any other time, and now I am concerned because now I think some leftists, not all of course, but some are coming a little bit out more in the open as being quite hostile to Israel and the Jewish people.
Representative-elect Ilhan Omar of Minnesota has been in the news for a 2012 tweet saying, quote, Israel has hypnotized the world. Meanwhile, Congresswoman-elect Rashida Tlaib of Michigan is Palestinian and headlined a boycott, divest, sanction rally in 2014.
There's really no such thing as a Palestinian. That's another program. But one who identifies with a Palestinian heritage, one, I believe she's from Michigan, and she is openly hostile and anti-Semitic. So now does this indicate some sort of a wave through the Democrat Party? Well, there are others, including some Jews, who are not really all that pro-Israel. So I don't know that it represents any kind of an anti-Semitic or anti-Israel wave on the part of the left, but just comparing, say, 20 years ago to today, there's a big difference.
That's Jan Markell of Understanding the Times. More midterm reaction at onenewsnow.com. In final news this hour, a new meaning to his and hers. 1 in 5 couples manage their money separately. That's according to a Policy Genius survey of 1,526 U.S. adults. That is the news for this hour. Thanks for listening.
Hello, AFR listeners. My name is Vladimir. I received my Operation Christmas Child shoebox during a harsh winter in Ukraine, where I grew up. My favorite item was minty dental floss. I remember thinking, wow, I guess they have interesting candy in America. I want children to experience the same unconditional love I did at the age of 9. You can get involved by visiting afr.net and clicking on the Operation Christmas Child banner today.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We will strive for bipartisanship. We believe that we have a responsibility to seek common ground where we can.
There are many things we can get along on without a lot of trouble, that we agree very much with them and they agree with us. I would like to see bipartisanship. I'd like to see unity.
Everywhere you go, from Portland, Oregon to Portland, Maine, all you see in cities, cranes, buildings, factories, warehouses, apartment buildings, condos. It's the biggest construction boom in the United States history right now. And so Republicans connecting the dots from this is our policies that have created this incredible boom.
America's a nation of believers, and together we are strengthened by the power of prayer.
I'm going to ask us all to rise up and let us pray. As never before, our nation needs prayer.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Oh, yeah. Welcome. Welcome into the program. Yeah, happy Thursday to you. It is Thursday, isn't it? It's been such a momentous week, again, that we're probably counting the days thinking, how much more? What else? Who else? How much more can happen? Well, I think quite a lot. This is our new normal. It's more than 24 hours worth of news in one 24-hour period. And all we can do is kind of, buck up a little bit and be prepared to not just absorb, but to properly process what is going on, what's coming at us. And so today is no different. We have a jam-packed program for you. This hour, we're going to be speaking with Stephen Moore. He's the author of the new book, Trumponomics. And it's a deep dive into the economic prospects of America's economy. And what we're going to do is we're going to discuss the book, and we're going to talk about his new article that he has up, Why the Left Hates Prosperity. Liberals are angry because they were sure Trump would fail. And I want to offer some insight during the interview with Mr. Moore. It's actually going to be my pleasure to interview his co-author, Art Laffer, for a documentary we're working on about taxes here in the state of Missouri. I'm going to be interviewing him on Monday in Nashville at his offices. And so it's going to be a pleasure to speak to Stephen Moore about their new book. But it's also an interesting kind of look, because I spent some time, as I mentioned, on that panel with a group of women who are Democrats, and listening to their concerns, and then considering how the Republicans talk about the economy and economic prosperity, and how we're so concerned about taxes because we pay them, and most Democrats are not concerned about taxes because they don't pay very much in taxes. There's a strange new bilateral world that's forming in America, where half of the country has absolutely no interest in what the other half of the country has interest in, because one half of the country is paying for the other half to exist. And that half that's getting everything paid for is only asking for more. They're asking for more things, more help. So we're going to see how that cracks up with him today. And then we're also going to discuss I want to take you back down memory lane. You may remember President Obama. Remember when he was our president? He had a press corps as well, and they treated him a little differently than the current press corps treats the current president, Donald Trump. I want to play some audio for you so you can listen to the difference in the reaction to someone Acosta-ing President Obama. So we're going to get to that in just a minute. First, our daily confession. So excited to share this with you. Philippians 1:6, being confident of this, that he who has begun a good work in you will continue to perfect it until the day of Christ Jesus. Now, why is that today's daily confession? Well, yeah, you know what? I'll tell you why. Because what we're seeing right now is a lot of people are losing faith. They're losing hope. A lot of people who maybe they went to church, maybe they believed, they were very, very focused on their Christian walk. They haven't gotten what they wanted from God, or they haven't seen the prayers answered in the way that they felt they should be answered. And there's a bit of turning away. We have to have faith that even in the face of our most difficult circumstances, he who has begun a good work in us will continue it until the day of Jesus Christ's return. And it's that knowledge and belief and faith that helps us to hold on during difficult times. Some of the difficult times, they're the kind of things that we see going on right now in California with the shooting, where one moment you're enjoying an evening out with friends, and the next moment people are dead around you, or you've lost someone dear to you. Other times it's much more along the lines of everyday life circumstances, working with people that hate you or don't like you, or maybe you hate, working in a job that isn't paying enough and isn't meeting ends, and you're not able to do everything that you need to do. or maybe it's watching someone else get the promotion you felt belonged to you. It's any circumstance in which you're questioning, what am I doing? We have to have faith. The Bible says that God is a rewarder of those that diligently seek him. And in order to walk in faith, we have to believe that he is. We cannot be double-minded in that aspect. So Philippians 1:6, being confident in this, that he who has begun a good work in you will continue to perfect it until the day of Christ Jesus. That is the bedrock truth. We can hold on to it. We can meditate on that scripture, and we can know that it's true. And then we can ask God to show us, show me. I'm a human being with a frail memory, and God knows how we feel because of the work of Jesus Christ on the cross. Father, show me where you've answered my prayers and what I can look forward to. And he will show you. He will open your eyes to answered prayer, and you'll be astounded at all of the work he's already done. And that will bolster you and help you to walk through these difficult times. So now I want to, we got to go down memory lane. And I love these because we forget how things were. It's been busy. We've had other things occupying our memory banks. And so our, short-term memory takes up the majority of the work, and the long-term memory storage, it just kind of, things just recede into the yesteryear. And so you might not remember the way the press corps was with then rock star President Obama, Mr. Drop the Mic, Barack Hussein Obama, Mr. Everybody's, super cool savior, pastor, best friend, Al Green impersonator. He was our bro. He was cool. He was down for the cause. He was every foreign leader's friend. He could bow and scrape to the best of them. He was the man. Remember? Okay, perhaps you didn't see him that way. No matter. The media did. And so here they are. They're at a press conference in the East Room. This is in the White House, the Yellow Room, the big open space where they often gather their reporters if there's going to be kind of a special speech or something. And President Obama is talking about who knows, who cares what. And there's a reporter in there who's really upset about the deportations. Now, remember, this was a farce because the president didn't deport more people than anybody else. He wasn't the deporter in chief. He was turning people around at the border, and then he was doing catch and release. He called the catch and release and the turnarounds deportations. Not actual, hey, you're in the country illegally. You've been ordered to be deported 10 years ago. We're going to get you out of here. Not those kind of deportations, made up deportations. So Obama had put that out about himself because it gave him cover, because then Democrats could say, well, what do you want? He's already the deporter in chief while he wasn't deporting anybody. And you can look across the country at the election results from the midterm just a couple days ago and see how states that used to be reliably Republican states like California and Nevada are now Democratic strongholds. Nevada just went all the way Democrat from the local level all the way up the ticket. Why? Because they have an outsized number of illegal aliens living there. They have a lot of immigrants living there. And those immigrants they're not assimilating properly, and they are voting for the same kind of stuff that they voted for in their failed third world sending countries. Donald Trump wasn't lying when he said they're not sending their best. Oh, no, I feel you getting triggered. A sweat has broken out on your brow. Don't talk to me about your personal problems. I'm telling the truth, and if you don't like it, that's your problem, not mine. So here we are. We've got Obama in the East Wing. He's looking cool, and every single reporter in the room, they're not seated. They're standing up with their cell phones up like they're at a Beyonce and Jay-Z concert. This person begins to just erupt. He can't control himself. He's angry. He's angry about LGBT, and he's angry about deportations. He will not stop talking. Now, who does that sound like to you? Sounds like Jim Acosta. The whole, I'm going to ask you question after question after question after question. I'm not going to ask one or two questions. I'm going to keep asking you. I'm going to badger you until I provoke you into something so I can then say, look, he never answers questions. That's Jim Acosta. And it was this guy too. Only we don't know who this guy was because the media wasn't going to tell us who this guy was. They weren't going to highlight who he was. They just wanted to see Barack Obama smack him down so they could chant his name. Here it is. It's number one.
I told you that the civil rights of LGBT Americans is... Yeah, hold on a second. Okay, you know what? No. Hey. Yeah, listen, you're in my house. It's not, you know what? It's not respectful when you get invited to somebody. You're not gonna get a good response from me by interrupting me like this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No. Shame on you. You shouldn't be doing this. Can we escort this person out? Come on. You can either stay and be quiet, or we'll have to take you out. All right. Can we have this person removed, please? Come on. Come on. Come on. No. Come on. Come on, guys. I'm just going to wait until we get this done.
So the press corps mocked the guy who seemed to be having diarrhea of the mouth and just couldn't shut up. And he was making a spectacle of himself, and they mocked him. They mocked him because how dare this man come into Obama's house? Never mind that he was standing in the White House, which is our house. The White House belongs to the people of the United States. Citizens, not illegal immigrants, by the way. Yes, I made that distinction. So what? You know, I'm really ready for people who are siding with illegal immigrants over our veterans and over our own homeless population, over our own American citizens who are mentally ill and homeless, over our own 450,000 orphans, most of whom are children of color. I'm really tired of those people trying to lecture me on how I talk. Why don't you figure out whether or not you really love this country or whether you belong in Guatemala? Because all the rest of us tax-paying citizens would certainly love to see all of these liberals who love Guatemalans and Hondurans more than they love Americans carry your little liberal limousine-riding selves with your cell phones and your Uber Eats app. Take yourself on down to Guatemala or Honduras and live down there with the people that you love, and leave America to those of us who love it and are paying for it. That's how I feel about that. And so you've got this, it's like an amazing thing to listen to. These are the same people, mind you. Now, there's been some turnover. It's not an identical group, but it's the same organizations. It's the same CNN, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, all of them. It's the same organizations. They're same reporters. Some of these reporters, like April Ryan and Jim Acosta, they've been there for years and years and years. And they were in that space chanting Obama's name like they were at a campaign rally, only they were in the East Room of the White House, and they were there to cover him, not praise him and worship him and lick his shoes, but that's what they were doing. One person pipes up and loses their mind, and they mock that person. They treated that person the same way you would treat someone who was disrupting a concert you were attending. You would boo, and you would want the police to take them out. And that's what President Obama did. He actually gestured to the Secret Service, but they didn't respond immediately. Then he actually said, let's get him out of here. And he moved his hand across again, like, you know, now get him out of here. And they made their way over and began to extract this person from the room, which caused him to escalate and then caused the press corps to mock him. So I got nothing against the White House press corps as an entity, as a group of people individually. I know a few of the people who work in the White House press corps. So this isn't a personal thing. It's how do you reconcile listening to that and their treatment of Obama like he was literally their God. And then you look at the way they treat Donald Trump, who is the commander-in-chief, and he and Sarah Huckabee Sanders are due the respect held by their offices. I don't care if you think they're lying. They still hold those spots, and this is America, and they should be treated with respect. We don't need you to chant Trump, but we do need you to treat him with respect. And that's why Acosta got his hard pass yanked. We'll be back with Stephen Moore right after this.
Maybe you've been hearing the messages from Preborn asking listeners to join together to help save babies' lives through ultrasound, and you're not sure how to respond. Here's the story of one woman who took that step.
I heard about Mission Preborn just before December of last year and asked my husband if we could give at least $140. Just last week we received our packet, My husband came in the house and he was telling me, this is our preborn packet, the ultrasounds. I started crying without even seeing them. Not only were there 5 babies, but one of the moms was having twins. We were just elated for that.
For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds, and you'll receive a story and a picture of babies' lives that were spared. All gifts are tax deductible, and 100% of your sponsorship goes to saving babies. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby, or go to preborn.com.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. During Saddam Hussein's reign of terror in Iraq, he made oppression an art form. Power and absolute control were his gods. The people existed for his pleasure and to fulfill his every whim. Anyone who didn't pay homage was a target for torture and, more often than not, death. He killed thousands of his own people. The people of Iraq were powerless without an advocate or recourse. It's no better these days for those under the control of ISIS. Now, Saddam Hussein and ISIS are extreme examples, but all of us need to be aware of the intoxication of power and control. Power is a drug, and there are very few people who can handle power responsibly. In Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 1, we find some compelling insights on oppression. Listen to these words. Then I looked again at all the acts of oppression which were being done under the sun. And behold, I saw the tears of the oppressed, and that they had no one to comfort them. And on the side of their oppressors was power. 3 quick lessons. First of all, oppressed people need compassion. They need to understand that there's somebody who cares about them. That we're not just saying, as long as it's not happening to me, it's too bad for them, but it's not coming my way. Secondly, oppressed people need an advocate. They need someone to speak up for them. And thirdly, oppressors need to be held accountable. People who oppress others need to know it's not okay and you're not going to get away with it. You will be held accountable. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. God hates injustice and oppression, and he will fight for the oppressed. Let's make sure we're on the right side.
You've been listening to Legacy Moment with Crawford Loritz, pastor of Fellowship Bible Church in Roswell, Georgia. For more information, go to livingalegacy.org.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Stacy Washington, host of Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk, AFR.net, urbanfamilytalk.com. Those are the websites you can find the podcast and more about what we're doing here on behalf of Christian radio and ministry and our Christian worldview. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. It's Stephen Moore. He's the author of Trumponomics, and he wrote this book with Art Laffer, and I'm so excited to speak with him. Stephen, thank you for joining the show.
Hi, I'm excited to be with you, too. Thank you very much for having me.
I'm super excited for 2 reasons. First of all, I believe I name-checked you in a op-ed in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, talking about the economy and taxes and things like that. And then I'm actually going to be in Nashville on Monday interviewing Art Laffer for a project that we're doing here in Missouri on Missouri's tax cut. So I'm really excited about this.
Art Laffer is the godfather of supply-side economics. He's probably the most important economist of the last 30, 40 years in terms of having a big impact on the Reagan tax cuts. And, of course, he and I worked together with Larry Kudlow on the Trump tax cut, helping design it and getting it enacted for Donald Trump. And, you know, that's what Trumponomics is really all about our voyage with Donald Trump to get this amazing economic expansion. And this is the biggest boom we've seen in 30 years. Nobody thought it was possible except for Donald Trump, and he's a true believer in this stuff, and he has so resurrected our economy. It's just a wonderful thing to see, and it didn't happen by accident, folks. It happened because Donald Trump has the right vision. He's a businessman. He understands how to make an economy grow, and so I was so proud to work with him on this. And we tell the whole story in our book, Trumponomics, and it's a fun story, and it has a happy ending.
I love that. I love that. And let's be clear here. We're talking about a monumental task, which was, about a year ago. You have the president and you and Mr. Kudlow, all of these really smart people, but you're not exactly, rock stars in the sense that you're not household names. You'll come together with the president and his team, and you start talking about what we can do to rev up the economic engine of the United States and remove some of the government, it's like harnesses that keep businesses from being able to do what they want. And what you're talking about in your book is growth, 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 which a lot of people on the left discount that. Stephen, tell us why it's so important. Why is growth such a huge goal for the Trump administration?
Well, it feels better, right, when we're growing and when we're slowing and receding and going into recession. And so, obviously, there's an old saying by John F. Kennedy that Reagan used to repeat, and now talks about it, which is that a rising tide lifts all boats. So when you have a tide of growth, it makes everyone better off, or at least it should. And, I'm really honored to, by the way, we have so many great stories about Donald Trump in the book. People will have a lot of fun reading. He's one of the most interesting people I've ever met. He's inexhaustible, by the way. I mean, I've never seen anybody who has more energy than Donald Trump. And, I'm 15 years younger than he is, and I can't keep up with the man. He's pretty amazing. And so it's just, there's something about him. He's a can-do guy. Liberals always talk about, we can't, this isn't going to work. And that, that liberals are pessimistic. We as conservatives are optimistic about the country. They're down on America. We're up on America. We think America is a great, great place. And they see a country of racism and sexism and xenophobia. And we see a country that is accepting of people and wants everyone, a land of opportunity. And that's where Trump is. He loves people. He loves the American people. He loves being around people. You can tell a lot about a man by how he treats the people who work for him. And I noticed that from the first time I met him 2.5 years ago, that the people around him loved him, and he treated them so well. And he's the kind of guy who will talk to the guy on the elevator or talk to the janitor in the bathroom. And, he doesn't put on airs. He loves people, and he cares about people. And it shows with his policies. This wasn't about helping rich people. As we say in the book, this wasn't about the rich. This was about working-class Americans who hadn't seen a pay raise in 15 years. And by the way, did you see the news that wages are now rising for the first time in 20 years?
We were told that couldn't happen, by the way. Stephen, remember? We were told wages couldn't go up.
That's another thing about Donald Trump. I mean, he proves all his critics wrong. So when people say Donald Trump can't do this or he can't do that, remember they said he couldn't win. Remember that?
Yeah. Okay, so
he can't possibly win. He's going to get creamed. It's going to be, some people put the odds at 99-1 that he was going to win the election. And, some people said on Fox News and on MSNBC and CNN, his chance of winning are zero. And he said he couldn't bring manufacturing back. And they said, how is he going to revive the economy with a magic wand? So I think maybe he's got that magic wand because the economy has warred that light.
Well, I think sometimes we can tell whether or not something is accurate just by kind of listening to what people say. When I hear, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States saying, "Hey, how's he going to do that? He needs a magic wand." It sounds to me like kind of hyperbole. The kind of stuff you hear on playgrounds and middle schoolyards, not the words of someone who's really confident in what they're saying. So I'm really interested in. It's kind of a phenomenon. You mentioned it, and I want to go into it because it's important. If a person finds themselves in a situation where economically they're very pessimistic, the first step towards changing your economic direction is changing your attitude about your economic prospects, which is, you said, Republicans see things very positively. Even in a downturn, there are places where you can make an enormous amount of money when the economy is down, and you can also make money when the economy is up, but it depends on your attitude. Can you talk about that?
Well, a lot of liberals believe that kind of limit the growth. And by the way, a lot of liberals don't even want our economy to grow. I mean, the radical environmentalists want to stop growth. That's why they want to stop our energy production. They want to put the oil and gas and coal industry out of business. Wait a minute, that's several million workers that work in the oil and gas and coal business. And why would you want to destroy their jobs? And by the way, when you go to, remember Hillary went to a place like Pennsylvania and West Virginia and said, we're going to put all the coal miners out of business. And then she wonders why she didn't win those states. Because people want opportunity. They don't want government to come in and destroy their jobs. And so, growth is so important because it means, it lowers our debt. It lowers our deficit. It makes it easier to get people out of poverty. It gets people off of welfare into work. And all of those things are so critical, not just for the overall economy, economy, but for improving people's lives. You know, if you look at the consumer confidence numbers today, record high. People are optimistic. People have a new, bounce in their step right now because they feel so good about the direction of the country.
I feel good about it, and I can tell you for personal, like,
nine, I can't believe it. I saw the president the other day, and I just said, Mr. President, this is working better than even I thought it would. And he smiled and he said, "It is working, isn't it?" And he said, "You ain't seen nothing yet." So it's a positivity that I think connects with voters, and people know. Look, Donald Trump is authentic. Sometimes I roll my eyes when he says some of the things he says, and I'm like, "Oh, Donald, I used to call him Donald. Now I call him Mr. President." Don't say that, But you got to watch what this guy does, and you got to look at his results. Liberals love to talk about what he says, but they don't want to talk about his results. Have you noticed that?
I have, and I think the reason is because it doesn't comport with what they said. Remember, the only predictions that they made were negative. They said if he became president, the economy would tank, that he would take us to war with a number of countries, that we'd suddenly become an annexation of Russia, like Crimea. They said a lot of things that were outrageous, and what we've had is exactly the opposite. And so when you talk about President Trump, like he's indefatigable. He doesn't tire out. He doesn't sleep a lot. He doesn't drink. He has a habit of tweeting early in the morning and driving people insane before they even get out of bed. But there's a method to the madness, and I've seen it with the trade. If you really read up on what he's doing, because you can't get it in the media, he's actually moving the parts around the board and rearranging them in a way that benefits Americans. And we hear a lot of pushback on that, Stephen. He says he's a nationalist as opposed to a globalist. People are trying to make that about race. But I see that statement as a declarative. It's basically a directional shift for us, saying deals that benefit our country, those will come in. We'll do those deals. Deals that benefit other countries before us, we won't do those because we're going to put American interests first. Why is that so hard for people to understand?
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I think it's his high energy is so evident when he's giving speeches, and just in terms of his view of the world. As I said, he's a can-do guy. He doesn't take no for an answer. He doesn't take failure. If you fail, you're out. Remember what he say, you're fired. That's what a businessman or woman does. They are results oriented. He's working for the American people, and he views it as that. He says, "I'm the CEO of the American economy now. I've got to make sure it's growing. I've got to make sure it's good for everybody." Whether it's, and by the way, I'm so sick of on CNN and these other stations that say, "Oh, he's a racist. He's a Jew hater. He doesn't like Hispanics." No, we got the lowest Black and Hispanic unemployment rate in 50 years. How can you call him a racist when his policies are working so well for the minorities in this country?
Well, you can't. Not if you're going to be honest. And I think the other thing that really enrages them about that is that he has close relationships with blacks who are Republicans. So there's proof that he not only has people in his life of color that are really they're a part of his inner orbit, but there's also proof that so Barack Obama didn't have this kind of success in lowering black unemployment, and he was the first black president, and the expectations were that he would benefit minority communities as well as white communities. In other words, all Americans, but specifically minority communities. He wasn't able to do that. President Trump has increased his share of black voters who approve of his work. It's not a ton, but it's significant. And he's also improved the lives of black Americans and, as you said, Hispanics, which I think is much more impactful than just having someone who's cool, who knows how to drop a mic and slow jam the news. I'd rather have the jobs and the economic prosperity myself.
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And, you look at the results now, they're so phenomenal. We go through them. The last chapter of our book, Trumponomics, is called A Light Switch is Flipped from Off to On. And that came from a guy who runs a little auto mechanic repair shop in outside of Cleveland. And I like to ask, businessmen and women, how's business? How are things? Are people coming into the store? Are they coming into the shops? Or how are the orders? And I'll never forget what Jimmy said to me. He's got about 15 employees. And I said, "Hey, Jimmy, how's business?" This was about 9 months ago. And he said, "Steve, it's like a light switch was flicked from off to on Election Day 2016. He said, "Ever since then, I've had more business than I can possibly handle." And that you tell that story over and over. It's not just Jimmy who runs the little auto repair shop. It's happening everywhere. Businesses are expanding. They're hiring more workers. They're making money. More people are starting businesses because they see more opportunities. And by the way, the 27 million people in this country who start businesses, people like Donald Trump, they're the backbone backbone of our economy. And what bothers me is so many of Trump's critics, they say they hate the rich and, the rich are making all the money. Our tax cut was to help middle-class people, but we understood you've got to have healthy businesses if you're going to have healthy jobs. My old boss, Dick Armey, used to say, liberals love jobs, but they hate employers. You can't have one without the other. And so that's the secret sauce of Donald Trump. He is pro-business. He is pro-growth. He puts America first. And by the way, putting America first, a nationalist means he puts the country and our businesses and workers first. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's absurd to say that that's racist. I'm a nationalist myself. I'm not a racist. I want everybody to do better.
I'm one too, and I'm black, so I guess I'm hoping that somewhere unicorns are exploding.
So explain to me how is being a nationalist racist? I don't even understand the logic.
Well, there is no logic to it. But if you're going to smear someone, you don't need logic. You just need to have a mouth that works and just say whatever you want. I want to highlight.
The other night I was on CNN and they said he's a anti-Semite. And I said, anti-Semite? How is he an anti-Semite? His daughter and his son-in-law are Jewish. They're bringing up his grandchildren as Jewish. How could he possibly be anti-Semitic?
Yeah, and all of his accountants and tax people and all of his attorneys, for the most part, are Jewish. It's ridiculous, right. And we know it's false.
The left is different from you and me. They're not constrained by the truth.
Well, I think being constrained by the truth actually keeps you in your lane and keeps you from crashing and burning, as we've seen a lot of these liberals doing recently, because their rhetoric doesn't hold up to the results the president is bringing. Now, you mentioned White House bulletin from early 2017 talking about over the next 10 years, 3% growth instead of 2% will yield a nominal gross domestic product that is 16 trillion with a T larger, federal government revenues 2.9 trillion greater, and wages and salaries of American workers 7 trillion with a T higher. That's outstanding. Why is that not the lead on every single newspaper in this country?
Yeah, I had a piece in the Wall Street Journal about this the other day, and we talk about it in our book Trumponomics that already, just because the increase of growth just since we passed the tax cut, the Congressional Budget Office now estimates over the next 10 years the U.S. economy cumulatively over the next 10 years will be $6 trillion larger. Well, if that's true, and there's every indication the economy will continue to grow, then that means we're going to have over $1 trillion of additional federal revenues, because when the economy grows, federal revenues grow. And that means we've already paid for 2/3 of the tax cut in just a little over 9 months.
9 months. I'm laughing because that's
amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing. It's amazing. Okay, we're closing out the interview now, and it's been such a pleasure to speak with you. I would like to extend, just for our family over here at Shea Washington, our thanks and gratitude for the hard work that it took. I know it was a lot of extra hours behind the scenes to come up with a bill that could be paid for in such a short time that would still yield economic growth.
This book, I think people will enjoy reading it, because I don't want to read an economics book, but it's not an economics book. It's really a storybook about how Trump did it. How did he pull off this economic miracle? It's all first person. We tell a lot of fun stories about Donald Trump. He's full of life, and he's a fun person to be around. And I always tell the story. What he eats for lunch and dinner on the plane? McDonald's, Big Macs, and for lunch, and Domino's pizza for dinner. He's a man of the people. But he's just. I think people will really enjoy it, and it's Trumponomics. And I want to send you an autographed copy, so send me your information so I can get that.
You know what? I will. I would love to have an autographed copy. And again, thanks from our family.
Well, you'll get one from Arthur Laffer when you go see him.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, we're so excited about going to see our CPA next year to do our taxes for this year, because we know we're going to be saving money, and our kids are excited about it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and appreciate all you do.
Thank you, Stephen. Stephen Moore, author of Trumponomics. With Art Laffer. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. All right, so we are slamming and jamming through hour one of the show. You stay right there. We're going to have your calls when we get back. It's 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037.
What does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's Uncommon Moment.
I used to get questions from people all the time about how I could justify working in the football world and being a Christian. It's such a violent game. What about all that bad language? How can you justify playing games on Sunday? Without a doubt, spending time in a locker room or on a football field definitely has its moments of being in the world. But I've also come to realize that God can only use us in the world if in fact we are in the world. The tension that may arise there requires godly wisdom and the Holy Spirit's leading. Stay close to God and let His wisdom and leading guide you.
New York Times best-selling author Tony Dungy, author of the popular Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. We desire to be a movement of time tellers. In 1 Chronicles 12:32 it says, "The sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the time, to know what Israel ought to do." In these perilous times, God is raising up a people of discernment who will see, pray, and act. We sound the alarm as watchmen. We cry aloud that God's people may be activated for His service. Join the movement at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Hey, want to go shopping later?
Yeah, sure. Where do you want to go?
Oh, we can go to JCPenney's, Belk, Target.
Whoa, wait. I was with you until you said Target.
What's wrong with Target?
What's wrong with Target? You mean besides the fact that they have an open door policy that lets men into women's restrooms, that Target?
Wait, what?
Exactly. As a matter of fact, before we go, grab your laptop, go to afa.net, and sign the pledge to boycott Target.
Okay, I'm on it.
Donald Trump's America.
A day after the midterm elections in which Democrats won enough seats to control the House in January, President Trump said he will not cooperate with Democrats if they use its subpoena power to launch investigations into his administration.
No. If they do that, then it's just all it is a warlike posture.
But the president also repeatedly praised Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi, who could become the next House Speaker, saying his chances of striking agreements on legislation were greater with a divided government, particularly in rebuilding the nation's infrastructure and lowering the cost of prescription drugs.
But if you look at it from the standpoint of gridlock, I really believe there's going to be much less gridlock because of the way this is going.
The president said both he and Pelosi, who he attacked on the campaign trail, could find common ground in the new Congress on rebuilding the nation's infrastructure and lowering the cost of prescription drugs. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
A couple of points. Number one, we all heard about the blue wave. I think it's pretty clear that the blue wave was a blue dribble. We pretty much fought to a draw. Number two, I think President Trump and the Kavanaugh hearings had a huge impact on the election, at least on the Republican side. Number three, we need to do something about the cost of health insurance. We among ourselves as Republicans tried. We got no Democratic support. I hope now the Democrats will come aboard and let's figure something out, because this is not meant to impugn anybody, but Obamacare didn't work. I wish it had worked. It didn't work. We got to try something new. Number four, I love Willie Nelson and Taylor Swift. I have their music on my phone, but they must have been smoking some of Willie's dope when they decided to get involved in politics. I think Hollywood needs to stay out of politics. I think the American people are smart enough to figure it out for themselves. And number five, I hope that our Democratic friends in the House will work with us and not just use their majority to harass the administration.
Everyone's talking about this. Mitch McConnell was doing a press conference, and he was actually he's so funny, Mitch McConnell. In fact, I do think we have a little bit of audio. Yeah, let's listen to that. So he says he's warning the House Democrats about presidential harassment. And what I found so fascinating about this comment is that the reporter infers that, he's giving advice to them. And he's like, no, they don't want advice from me. But he goes back to the historical, the archives, if you will. And he says, hey, you know what? Remember when Republicans were really interested in investigating a president, and we spent a lot of time doing that back when Bill Clinton was in charge? And look how the voters punished us after that. Check him out. It's a quick hit here. It's number 3.
Senate Republicans do in the event that the House Democrats try to obtain President Trump's tax records?
Well, you know, the whole issue of presidential harassment is interesting. I remember when we tried it in the late 90s. We impeached President Clinton. His numbers went up and ours went down, and we underperformed in the next election. So the Democrats in the House will have to decide just how much presidential harassment they think is good strategy. I'm not so sure it'll work for them. Yeah.
So just to go back to that, are you recommending that for House Democrats that the oversight that they have said that they're going to do might backfire on them? Are you saying that they...
No, they're not interested in my recommendations. All I'm doing is making a historical observation that the business of presidential harassment, which we were deeply engaged in the late 90s, improved the president's approval rating and tanked ours. Thus, my observation that might not be a smart strategy, but it's up to them to decide how they want to handle that.
So he's right. And so either way, this benefits the president. And let me just do some, a little slapdash analysis here. It's my show. I'll say what I want. Not paid to say anything. I'll say exactly what I think, which is the president's already telegraphing that when they were deciding what they were going to do about the midterm elections, where they were going to put their muscle, which the muscle was President Trump arriving on Air Force One within full view of a aircraft hangar with 15,000 supporters in it, a media stand packed to the gills with every media outlet, and live streams all over the globe going fast and hard with the cameras pointed in his direction. And every single stop, that was the case. You see Air Force One, he deplanes, he says hi at the rope line, he gets up on the stage and electrifies the crowd, which has been literally, we were jumping like we were at a concert for about an hour and a half before he got there. I've never been to anything like it before. Remember, I've heard him speak 3 times, but that rally was like the apex of what is this Trump phenomenon. And so he could have tried to spread that really thin across all of those House districts. But when they looked at where they need to make their mark, and I'm talking about the mark on the federal judiciary that lasts for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, possibly 40 years out, reshaping the judiciary with constitutional judges, textualists, people who do not believe that the Constitution, which is written on sheepskin, is a living, breathing document. Rather, they believe it was written by the framers to be a timeless edict that could cover all circumstances. That's what we're looking at him. He made the choice to do that. Donald Trump made a concerted choice to choose to work on the Senate races so that he could get a majority in the Senate that would be immune to the Collins-Murkowski effect. So with or without Collins or Murkowski, he's going to be able to get that agenda done through the Senate, which is all about the judges. It's all about the replacement for the next 2 that retire. It's all about the replacements for all of these liberal activists who keep trying to smack him down in the executive with these, we enjoin you, you can't end DACA, we enjoin you, you can't implement a travel ban. Every other president's been able to do it, but you can't do it because your name's Donald Trump. He's going to put a stop to that. And that's going to be something that outlasts his presidency. It's going to outlast the Democrats. It's going to outlast Pelosi. It's going to be there as a legacy that he can leave for this country, and it is far more consequential than the House. And remember, controlling the House for 8 years, have we defunded Planned Parenthood? I mean, what have we done exactly as the Republicans holding the House for 8 years? They don't deserve to hold it anymore. And I'm someone who I voted for my Republican candidates, and I hated to see some of the ones that lost. I hated it. I hated it. But if you don't deliver, that's what happens. Voters will get rid of you if you don't do what you promised to do on the campaign trail. So let's go to the phones. We have Bill in Alabama. Bill, thank you for calling the show today.
Hey, Stacey.
Hey.
What I'm calling about is, aren't there rich people on the left that don't want the money to be spent as far as taxes are concerned?
There are rich people. In fact, they have quite a few. I mean, all of the people who are the heavy players, Nancy Pelosi is very wealthy. I think she's probably wealthier than Mitt Romney, and people always talk about the Romney wealth, but they never talk about the Pelosi's. Also, Claire McCaskill is really wealthy. That one who lives in Connecticut, Pocahontas, she's really wealthy. She lives in a multi-million-dollar home in Connecticut. So you're right. They have money on their side too, but power is even more delicious than money. We know it's true. Power is ultimately how you can control other people's money and enrich yourself. And so you don't care about the tax code when you have all of the power. And that's the difference between the Republicans, who honestly, it's almost as if we're a little too simple, right, Bill? We just want to, lower taxes and get government out of the way, and then you take care of making your own money. And the Democrats want to control you and your money and your guns and your bedroom and everything else. They want to control it. And that power is what drives what they do.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling in. Yeah, so he's making a good point. And I would never say that there are no rich people on the Democrat side, but I will say, and this was something that I wanted to mention to Stephen Moore, but it's so fascinating to listen to an expert like him, someone who's written all these books and who really knows tax policy, to discuss the Trump phenomenon. And I'm so glad he wrote the book, and I'm so glad I'm going to have a copy. And I will try to get 2 copies so that maybe we can give one away. I don't know, but I'll try to get more than 1 copy signed by Art Laffer and Stephen Moore next week when I'm there. But what I noticed about the panel that I was on the other night, what the Democrats who were on that panel were talking about what they want. They talked about the extreme cost of, health insurance. They talked about, and this is under Obamacare. They talked about the extreme cost of the prescription medications, which we actually know that we have a member of our family who has a chronic illness, and the medications are extremely expensive. Even with our Cadillac plan and the benefits that we have through my husband's work, it is expensive. But I think the reason we have a better outlook about it is because we've weathered these kinds of economic storms before, and because we're a household with, my husband is the breadwinner and I'm the little supplemental helpmate. And so together we're able to strategize these things, and we're able to shop things around. And then of course we pray over it, and, we ask the Lord to bless what we're doing. And that's after years, we've been married for over 20 years, of learning that having a negative and pessimistic outlook about anything, but specifically your finances, means your negative, pessimistic outlook is literally turning your economic ship in a direction that is going down. The minute you start to think about your finances in a positive way, I can manage this, I can change this, we can overcome this, we can get around this corner, we can pay this bill off, that is when your circumstances begin to change. If you're negative about your workplace, you're going to have fewer opportunities there. You're not going to excel. If you're positive about it, even in the face of what looks like, kind of negative circumstances, your future doesn't have to be right there in that space. Do we not serve a God who is absolutely intimately interested in everything, including the number of hairs on our head? He will work things out for your good. He is working things out for your good. But if you are sitting around talking about how, well, I can't do this and I can't do that, then you can't. End of story. You don't continue to complain. Don't even bother to waste your breath. You just said you can't do it, so don't. You're not doing anything because you just said you can't. And so I'm not talking about prosperity gospel or speak it into existence. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the very simple act of orienting ourselves mentally towards success. It doesn't mean that you will always be successful or that you will never fail, but it does mean that your attitude will enable you to pick yourself back up, learn from the failure, and keep pushing. And economically, especially when we talk about the leadership in this country, we talk about having a president who President Obama constantly down-talked the economic prospects of this country. He constantly talked about how hard it was to create jobs, like that was the government's job, how hard it was to manage just anything. Just go back and watch the clips for yourself. Well, Hillary Clinton's out there talking in her faux black voice. I don't feel no ways tired. And she's falling down and getting thrown into the back of her van. And you got Donald Trump running around saying, yeah, we've made some horrible deals, but I'm going to fix those deals. We've done some horrible things economically. We've made some horrible decisions around the world. But if I'm elected, I'm going to change that. And then what does the media do? They say he can't do it. They say he can't win. He gets in, he changes it, he does it, he fixes it, and then they start complaining. Remember, we covered it here on the show. There were numerous people in media and in Hollywood who were wishing for an economic downturn and for the GDP not to grow because they felt like it would help Donald Trump's economic prospects. Any person who would rather see America fail just so they can maintain political power, that's not even an American. Forget about you even being over here in the club with us nationalists we just like America. You ain't even a good American. You deserve to go be banished to Venezuela or Guatemala or something like that for 90 days. And then when you come back and you've lost 25 pounds, then you can talk to us about how you don't want us to succeed. American success actually benefits all other countries on the planet because remember, we give away multiple trillions of dollars in U.S. aid to other countries. We're the most generous country on the face of the planet. And that is why when Donald Trump is out and the media cameras aren't rolling, all those countries that receive all that aid from us, all of our European partners, yeah, they're backslapping with Donald Trump. They're laughing and yucking it up and taking selfies because they know when America prospers, they prosper too. More trade, more opportunities for them to put their products in American hands and in our little Amazon shopping carts. More opportunities for them to do deals with our companies and to bring our technological advances to them and for them to bring their products to us and for us to have even more interaction economically. So this is a super important thing for us to get our heads wrapped around. It's like you're saying when you're voting and you're voting for this kind of stuff, if you're voting for the Democrats, it's like you're saying, I want to vote with the losers. Or, I'm sorry, a lot of the Democrats are winners. Let's not play. These people are rich, they're powerful, they're influential. But their constituency, it's like you're saying, I want to be with a bunch of people who think I'm a loser. I want to vote for a group of people who think I'm too dumb, lazy, and inept to take care of myself or to make a better future in the best place on the planet to even think about being. Why do you think so many people want to immigrate here, lawfully and unlawfully? Because the unlawful immigrants understand, well, you know, I might not ever be able to be legal there, but as long as I'm living there and I'm making $5 an hour instead of $5 a day, I can send what is the equivalent of a day's wages back to my family and still have all those other dollars left over for me to take care of myself. And then if they really have their head screwed on straight, they know they can get some welfare, drop a baby in America. Now you got a food card, you have housing assistance, your child is a citizen. Now you have a pathway to citizenship through your child. It's a deal that can't be beat. So there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of, really, it takes a minute to think it through. But if you sit there for 1 second and you say, you know what, forget all of this political discussion because politics is life, but set that aside for just 1 second and just think about the prospects for my house, my family, what I want to do. And if you're reading your Bible and you believe that God's word is true, that you believe what God's word says about you, he never says anything bad about us, then you know what you're doing with your vote is a reflection of how you're living your life. And if you're voting for the people who think you're a loser and only the government can save you, then what are you doing reading the Bible? You believe in that magic old white guy who's controlling your life and the lives of everybody, at least all the black people anyway. He's controlling everybody. Now, certainly, you know that I'm being facetious when I say that, but that is what I've heard it too many times. People have called this show and said, well, you're just discounting what white people are doing because your Republicans pay you to say that stuff. No, I'm discounting this magic old white guy in the sky who controls all the prospects of black people and keeps black people down because that is just ridiculous. That's why. And also because there is no one greater than the God that I serve. My provider, the lifter of my head, my shelter, my sanctuary, my refuge, my everything is all, Alpha and Omega, beginning and end, transcends time. The God that we serve is greater than all of that other stuff. Pick one, you only get one. That's our one. If you're leaving us, God bless from the heartland. You have onenewsnow.com news and information up next.
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk is that alternative radio network because we choose to infuse Jesus in everything we do.
We count it a blessing to be able to speak with integrity and to speak honestly on the issues.
Thank you for joining us, partnering with us, being a part of
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk, so that we can stand for the gospel.
Truth. Wisdom. Empowered. Urban Family Talk. A ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. Why? That is the question for investigators in Thousand Oaks, California, after a Marine veteran shot and killed 12 people at a bar. More now from Fox's Jessica Rosenthal.
Parents who've been waiting and wondering if their unreachable children are among the deceased are finding out, including Jason Kaufman. He said his 22-year-old son Cody was the oldest of his boys.
Cody was the big brother that my kids need. I have a daughter coming on the 29th of this month that he was so excited to have his first sister.
People gathered along the route of the procession that carried Sergeant Ron Helis. He was one of the 12 victims shot when he entered the bar. The sheriff says the shooting stopped after Sergeant Helis arrived. In Thousand Oaks, Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has been hospitalized after falling in her office and breaking 3 ribs. The Supreme Court says the fall actually occurred yesterday, and Ginsburg went to George Washington University Hospital today after experiencing discomfort overnight. The Supreme Court did not have any cases scheduled today. A U.S.-born Israeli author and terrorism expert says there is no more hiding the fact that Arab countries are openly cooperating with Israel to confront the growing threat of Iran. Chad Groening has more.
Recently, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made an unannounced visit to Oman, a country adjacent to Saudi Arabia. And there have been other overtures to Arab states like the United Arab Emirates. David Rubin is the former mayor of the Israeli city of Shiloh and author of the new book, Trump and the Jews.
They're realizing suddenly that, sure, ideology is one thing, but when it comes to personal and national interests, that Israel is a better bet for them than a country like Iran, that Israel really just wants to live peacefully in the Middle East, and if they can cooperate with Israel to prevent Iran from taking over the Middle East, then it's a good thing.
And Rubin says at some point we will reach the breaking point when Iran has full nuclear capability.
And Israel can't allow that to happen. So my prediction is that Israel is going to have to launch that preemptive strike, that there will be passive military support from the United States, and that Saudi airspace will be used for that attack, which will greatly reduce the duration of the attack and therefore preventing the need to refuel along the way.
I'm Chad Groening.
Remember the twin sisters who represented different parties when they ran for seats on the same Michigan County board? Turns out they won't be working side by side after all. That's because the twins did not get identical results in voting Tuesday. Monica Sparks, a Democrat, ended up being the top vote getter for her seat, but her Republican twin sister Jessica Ann Tyson came in second in her district, meaning she won't be on the same board. Sparks has stated that she was motivated to seek political office after her sister declared her candidacy. In final news this hour, there looks to be bad news for the NBC comedy I Feel Bad, which turns out to be good news for families. Bill Bumpus reports.
Sponsors seem to be shying away from advertising on the program that airs Thursday evenings at 8:30 Central on NBC. Tim Winter, president of the Parents Television Council, says they're troubled by the show's content.
A middle-aged mom is working with a bunch of young guys in a kind of a digital media company. And she sexualizes herself. She uses language that would, in the public, would be sexual harassment. This TV show sexualizes children as young as 9 with their sexually provocative behavior. So here's Hollywood again being hypocritical that they profess to condemn the stuff that leads to Me Too, while at the same time perpetuating it on the air.
Winter tells AFN since the show premiered, his media watchdog group has reached out to 20 advertisers of I Feel Bad, and only one has returned to sponsor the comedy, and that was a local media buyer, not national.
And it looks like that show may very well be headed for cancellation. This is the show that we believe is one of the most troubling of the new season on broadcast television.
I'm Bill Bumpus.
That's all for this hour. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
I would use and I'd burst into tears because I just couldn't stop it on my own. So I got into Teen Challenge, and it opened the door for God to come in and do the work in me that I couldn't do in myself.
If you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, Adults in Teen Challenge can help. There are centers across the country, and you can find the one nearest you at 855-END-ADDICTION or at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We will strive for bipartisanship. We believe that we have a responsibility to seek common ground where we can.
There are many things we can get along on without a lot of trouble, that we agree very much with them and they agree with us. I would like to see bipartisanship. I'd like to see unity.
Everywhere you go, from Portland, Oregon to Portland, Maine, all you see in cities, cranes, buildings, factories, warehouses, apartment buildings, condos. It's the biggest construction boom in the United States history right now. And so Republicans haven't done a great job of selling and connecting the dots from this is our policies that have created this incredible boom.
America's a nation of believers, and together we are strengthened by the power of prayer.
I'm going to ask us all to rise up and let us pray. As never before, our nation needs prayer.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome to the program. You know what? I'm so excited. We are going to speak next segment to Paula White, spiritual advisor to President Trump, pastor of New Destiny Christian Center in Apopka, Florida. And she's going to talk about Christians' impact on the elections. And this is important for us. We are really not doing all that we can do. And if you are doing all that you can do, meaning you're voting, you're praying, you're working on your Christian worldview, amen to that. And I'm so grateful for that. But there are plenty of us who are not. And we need to, it's a process. No one gets anywhere instantly, except in the movies on Star Trek where they transport and 1 second they're there and the next second they're in the place where they're going. In real life, it takes time to get from point A to point B, and it's a continual effort. You're either sliding backwards or you're moving forward. It's kind of hard to just stay still. And so we want to do more. And so it's going to be great to talk to Pastor Paula White about the impact we can have on elections. And we can have more of an impact. And I know I've got friends texting me and sending me notes about this story. Arizona election officials are scrambling to confirm ballot signatures. They're calling people in because mail ballots were dumped at polling places and the signatures don't match the signatures on record. Of course, they're all votes for the Democrats, the ones that they're having trouble validating. Now, why is this happening? They've already called the House for the Democrats and now they're scrambling to actually make it happen. Well, you tell me. You tell me. I mean, in my mind, it sounds to me like some rigged election. We're always getting accused of voter suppression on the right, but on the left, there's cheating. That's what I see going on. It looks like cheating. It sounds like cheating. It smells like cheating. Probably is cheating, right? So, we got to pray and pray for justice and for honest people to be in charge of these things and for there to be prosecutions and people brought to justice for subverting our electoral processes. Because, look, if Democrats win legitimately, they won. They ran their people. They, dominated the media. They've used all of the gifts that they've been given, and they won. What you going to do? Next time, have a better message. Next time, knock more doors. Next time, spend more time talking about and participating in the things that are going to make a difference in the election. That's all you can do. But if you're seeing all of these boxes getting dumped at polling places, well, that doesn't sound to me like those are those are from this election. Does that sound to you like they're from this election if the boxes are dumped out back of the polling place? Well, how'd they get outside in the first place? Why are they dumped after the polls are closed? That means they came from outside the polling place. How are those legitimate votes? The signatures don't match. What's the question here? They're not legitimate votes. So anyway, now I want to listen to, Washington Free Beacon does their video clips. They put them on YouTube and on their website, and they call them Beast Mode, where you hear the guy come on, he makes the announcement about Beast Mode. We haven't had one on the show in quite a while, months and months and months. Well, they have this Beast Mode video where Mitch McConnell, Senator Mitch McConnell, says that Republicans will keep confirming as many judges as possible. I just talked about the impact of that during last hour. And I'll tell you what, I think everyone understands how consequential this is. Even some in the media who aren't friendly to Republicans are talking about the difference that's being made here. Strategy-wise, it's chess, not checkers, that the president chose the Senate instead of trying to win the House. He knew there was a danger he would lose the House. It is the typical, kind of boomerang effect in elections. When one party's elected to the White House, they usually suffer in the midterms because people are like, well, I wanted this, or I didn't want that, or I like this, or I don't like that. And so people come out. And whichever party loses the White House is usually pretty motivated for the midterms. But this wasn't the route we were expecting. We were told to expect a blue wave, and we didn't get it. So here we are. He's got Senator Mitch McConnell talking about the Republicans keeping and confirming that they're going to confirm as many judges as possible. It's going to be a judge train. It's number 2.
Beast mode. 3, 2, 1.
The president, I think, has done an excellent job in picking young men and women who believe the job of the judge is to follow the law. And we intend to keep confirming as many as we possibly can for as long as we're in a position to do it.
I love it when they do those. I love it. I don't know if I put it on Facebook. I'll put it up there so you can watch it. If you want to watch, they have this bear that's like ravaging around, and then there's a little explosion and there's fire, and it's just super fun. I mean, if that's the kind of fun you like to have, political fun. You might have a real life where you actually watch football or something like that, or, and good for you. I don't. So let's go to the phones. Jacob, thank you for calling the show today. What's your comment?
Okay. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. The thing, you mentioned some good stuff, I'll tell you, because, my journey has been actually from Minister Louis Farrakhan to being a born-again Christian, a missionary, and a Republican.
Wow.
So it's been I could write 3 books easily. And it shows you the power of God. And one thing that makes me laugh when you said it on the last segment is that, it's the white man. He got all the money. Anyone, he's paying out. It makes me laugh in a different kind of way, very deeply, because you see how deceived people truly are. I mean, you look at deception in the dictionary, you see those kind of people's picture. It's just really, you have to laugh like you laugh at a little child because they truly believe it. They make white folks God. And it's like, you just put yourself down tremendously more than anybody else could, and they don't really see it.
No.
I've been to the place where I was down to no money at Checkers, getting ready to have my last meal. A guy I ended up become close to in a fellowship with, he used to steal cars. He called me up right after I got that last meal. He said, "Joseph, I want to start a Paula business. Can you help me? We're going to use your cars for me to take you around. I'll pay you." And from then, it's been all the way up.
See, this is what I'm talking about. This is the kind of story that if you're listening and you're in a rough patch, this is for you. Jacob is talking to you because you're talking about coming from a place where, I think the people who follow the minister Farrakhan, they're not all bad people. It's just they've just been deceived by his words. And when you break free from that, all of a sudden, it's just like you said, you have a friend who calls and says, "Let's do this together. Let's make something happen." And all of a sudden, everything's different. It took time. I know y'all had to work really hard, but you did something with yourself. You said, "I'm doing something else," and then you did it.
Oh, yeah. It's an amazing journey, and it's well worth every second of it because when you look back, it's like you almost lose your mind praising God.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for calling and telling us about that, Jacob. Your story is one of, it's encouraging. It's one that we need to hear it, and we need to focus on that and focus on those encouraging moments so we can propel ourselves forward. Because we really have to make the decision ourselves, as you did. We have to decide we're going to be different and we're going to go in a different direction. Thank you so much for the call. Yeah, I get to a place where I'm just like, if you stop for a second and think back to where you were, let's say you just think back where you were 5 years ago. And if you're having trouble remembering, because at first you're like 5 years ago, okay, where was I really? It takes a minute to go back in your mind. Where were we living here? Where was I working? What were my main concerns back then? It's the primary reason I started keeping a prayer journal, because I couldn't keep those details together. And so in my prayer journal, I put down what I'm praying for. Sometimes I write the actual prayers out. And I also put reflections in there from just the frustrations and what I'm hoping God will do. And then what you can do is you can flip back and you can say, what was I praying for? And in the front, it just has a list of things, just specific items that I'm praying for, people that I'm praying for. And all along the back of the inside of the cover of this journal, and we're talking about a journal that costs less than $5 at any store that you go to. You just get it, nil notepad, whatever, and you start writing in there. And I tell you what, keeping track, like the lady said in the movie War Room, when you keep track, it gives you such a huge look into how God has moved circumstances. You can see where someone that's in your life that you were kind of like, oh my goodness, why is this person? That God uses that person, your relationship with that person, to facilitate growth or to facilitate you starting something new, ending something, moving certain people out of your life where these are people you never thought you'd ever be without, and then you are, and you think, well, it's the end of everything, and it's not. It's just the beginning of something new. I can't stress it enough. We need to have an attitude of gratitude for what God is doing in our lives, because there's so much more that he wants to do, and he will do. But we got to get in cooperative mode. Stop the stinking thinking. Stop putting stop allowing people to talk to you and tell you that you are this victim and that victim and you don't know, you can't do. No. Don't receive it. No, thank you. I've had people tell me, well, your kids are going to be this. Since you hate this, your kids are going to be that. I'll write it right down on social media. I do not receive that. Your curses do not work here. You can't say bad things about my kids and expect them to come true. They're covered by the blood of the Lamb. These are God's kids. He gave them to me for a time. You don't have any power here. No one can have that power over you unless you give it to them. You have to literally lay down your own power and say, I receive what you say about me. Nancy Pelosi, Kamala Harris, Oprah, whoever is down talking you and making you, Joe Biden, they're going to put you back in chains. In America, you think somebody's going to put you in chains? Go out, take your driver's license with you, go to Walmart, purchase a firearm, take it straight from the Walmart over to the range, show them the firearm that you've purchased and say, I'd like you to show me how to use this. They'll take you right out on the range. They'll just let you buy some of the cheap range ammo. They'll help you put 250 rounds through it, and they will make appointments with you to come back. These people do this for free. You don't have to pay anyone to train you on a firearm. You can literally go to the range with your new gun, ask them to train you on it. They will train you on the gun that first day. You can go back there for an hour a day, every day. And the next time someone says they're going to put you back in chains, you can say, no, you ain't. Nobody's putting me in chains. I'm an American citizen and I have the right. It's a God-given right enshrined in the Constitution. My Constitution protects my right to defend myself. So there will be no chains here. That's what you can do. Now, that sounds like a lot of work, but that's what being responsible for yourself entails. Lots of work. It's fun. It's fun. It's fun to be responsible for yourself and to ultimately know that there's only one being that you have to submit yourself to utterly in order to be in the right, and that's God. And for us women, also our husbands. So you have a lot of room there. You have a lot of room for your self-governance. Ultimately, it's your choice to lay that power down. You either believe other people can control you and make your life a living hell, or you don't. Pick. Make your choice. Whether you are listening to me and you believe what I'm saying or not, you've already made your decision. You already either believe the naysayers or you don't. If you already believe them, you can just decide you don't and start on a different path. It's just that easy. So now I want to get into, oh my goodness, so much. You should see this stack I have here on my desk for topics for the show today. I want to, first, we mentioned this yesterday. What do I hear? Do I hear music? Okay, so we will get to this, but we'll have to do it in the third segment because right now we're going to have Paula White, spiritual advisor to President Trump, pastor of New Destiny Christian Center in Apopka, Florida. Pastor Paula White's going to be with us after this. I am so excited. Stay right there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You know, our tours each year fill up quickly. And so I'm letting you know now, don't tell anybody else now, that the 2019 Spiritual Heritage Tours are planned for June and for September. So if you want to go this year, that is 2019, you need to let us know as soon as you can. Visit the website spiritualheritagetours.com. spiritualheritagetours.com. Again, those are two separate trips, one to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, and the other one to Washington, D.C. and George Washington's Mount Vernon. Stephen McDowell, who's the president and founder of the Providence Foundation, is our historian, and he'll be on both trips telling us the behind the scenes and the stories of who, what, when, and why.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Congress has lots of unfinished business. One important item is prison and sentencing reform. The House of Representatives has already passed the First Step Act. It is time for the Senate to do the same. Recently, I had Rebecca Hagelin on Point of View Radio Talk Show to talk about her commentary on our failing prisons and faulty war on drugs. A few months ago, I had Star Parker on to talk about the same legislation. These women will admit that they have been known as being tough on crime, but both of them also realize locking up parents of kids for years for nonviolent drug offenses is doing more damage to society than good. Our current federal laws require mandatory sentences for nonviolent drug offenses. Often the people we throw into prison for 2 decades are low-level dealers, not drug kingpins, who we really need to get off the streets. Sadly, they receive little or no vocational training and little in the way of drug rehabilitation. No wonder the recidivism rate in America is so high. President Trump has made this issue one of his most important issues. Jared Kushner has been given the responsibility to push the legislation forward. It passed the House of Representatives back in May with overwhelming bipartisan support, and when it reached the Senate Judiciary Committee, senators added some modest common-sense sentencing reform initiatives. To those who say that this is merely an attempt to be weak on crime, Rebecca Hagelin has a response. A very small percentage of arrests for drug distribution involve major drug traffickers. Most of the arrests are for small-time, nonviolent offenders. Many of them are addicts who turn to selling drugs to support their habit. Warehousing them in prison for years at taxpayer expense makes little sense. That's why it's time for the Senate to vote on this sensible piece of legislation. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Graceworks Pictures, Indivisible, based on the true story of Army Chaplain Darren Turner and his wife Heather. Rated PG-13. Now playing. IndivisibleMovie.com.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for being here. I'm totally pumped about the prospect of watching the president kind of walk through. Remember that there is a roadmap for this. President Trump's not the first president to have the midterm flip and have, the divided government, lose the House of Representatives. It's not like it's never happened before. And as we've seen him be very creative in his solutions on trade and tariffs and different negotiations, such as the Paris Climate Accord, ending that, his genius in negotiating with Kim Jong-un in North Korea, stopping the missile test, stopping the visible threats to our allies in that portion of the world. There have been really not enough credit has been given to the president for his creative handling of those problems. And this isn't to say that I've loved everything that he's done or everything that he's said, but when you see someone who's constantly working and trying, just putting their best effort out there to do what they said they were going to do, and they never get any credit for it, but they always get the smacks, because I'm all about giving the smacks out when you don't do what are you doing stuff you said you wouldn't do, or are you not doing what you said you were going to do? Oh, you're going to get some smacks from over here. Delivered in love, but you're going to get them. But when you're not getting any credit, have you ever been there? Have you ever been in a place where you're working your buns off and you're not getting any credit? And I'm certainly not talking about myself. I'm just saying, have you ever? I think we can all commiserate with that feeling when you know you're thinking to yourself, I think I might be doing a good job here, and then you realize, yeah, but nobody's looking, so no one's going to give you any credit for that. So just keep working because you ain't getting any credit for that. That is not a good place to be. Yet we see him continuing on because he's on a mission. So I'm excited about speaking to our next guest. We have Paula White, spiritual advisor to President Donald J. Trump. She's also the pastor of New Destiny Christian Center in Apopka, Florida. Pastor White, thank you for joining us today.
Stacey, it is wonderful to be with you. I hope you're having a great day, and I'm loving just listening to you.
I'm so glad. So when I saw you on the calendar, I was like, what? This is going to be awesome. So first of all, I want you to dispel a myth for us that it goes around, and I don't know so much that my listening audience has a problem with it, but I do want it on the record here on the show. A lot of people say that the president only adopted a more Christian aspect because he wanted to appeal to evangelical voters. I tend to believe that over time he's experiencing a heart change, and that the evidence of that is that he speaks so openly about Christianity and God and the influence that God has on his life. What is your take on where he is right now as a Christian?
Well, first off, the first part of your statement could not be further than true, that people who would say he just recently adopted becoming a Christian or because he wanted the evangelical vote. The second part of your statement, and I'll go back to that, is true, that I see him growing deeper in the things of God. And I can only imagine the weight that is upon him every day, and he knows how deep his faith is. And so let's take this way back. I've been a part of his life and the family's life for 18 years. 18 years ago, I'm sitting in my office, and my secretary says, Mr. Trump's on the line. And, I think if I would have been watching The Apprentice or, we would have been on, I would have gone, you're fired. Like, sure. And they said, no, Pastor Paula, for real, Mr. Trump's on the line. I'm thinking they're pulling my leg and kind of joking around with me. And so finally, after keeping on hold for a while, I pick up, he said, hello, Pastor Paula. He said, you're fantastic. You have the it factor. And I said, well, sir, we call that the anointing. And he said, he started repeating that to me verbatim, Stacey. He'd listened to 3 of my sermons on value of vision. And honestly, I'm really quite impressed because I'm thinking that, as a pastor who's now been in ministry for 34 years, I'm thinking he listens better than most of my congregation. And he not only repeated that, but we continued in conversation. He told me how he grew up in church and how he was confirmed Presbyterian and how he went to church every single Sunday with Norman Hill's church. And he told me some of the stories that impacted his life and the sermons. And he could, again, think that were so dear to him. And I began to understand that his mother was a very strong Christian and praying woman. And we just talked about the things of God. And he said, are you ever up in New York? I said, well, I actually am. I'm doing a Bible study for New York Yankees. And so he said, I'd love to meet you if you're ever in town. And so, of course, that eventually happened. But I didn't just get to know him. I got to know his family, Ivanka, now, of course, Jared, and Eric, now, of course, Laura, Don Jr., I got to know Melania. I got to know his staff, whether it was Rona or Keith or whoever. And the relationship really was one, and I never want to minimize because his foundation of faith has always been very strong to him. He's always been a Christian. And people might want to look and judge, and say, well, what about this point in his life or what's that? And I think we all have those moments in our life, and that's the story of the completion of the cross and redemption, and that God wanted a family and the finished work of Jesus Christ and his grace extended in our life. And I never minimized his roots because he came from a very strong Christian home and has a very solid foundation of faith in his life. But for me, and I can only speak on my behalf, God, I felt, spoke to me, obviously not in an audible voice, that's showing who I am. But little did I ever think that would lead to, one day he was going to be president. It was just sincerely an assignment from God. And so this has been going on a long time, and it wasn't like people will see an image or pictures of us praying in the White House or, him authentically saying, we don't worship government, we worship God. Even the news conference yesterday, talking about how dear his faith was to him. And I could literally tell you 1,000 stories about him and his walk with God. And he has been saved, and he has received Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. And I think you are right and accurate in this, that there are some things in life. He's also a very successful, or has been a very successful businessman, and pretty much anything he put his hand to, he said, and I'm kind of parroting what he said. He said, I never really had problems and stuff, so he was always successful in life. And we look at presidents, former presidents that have gone in office, and most of them, by 2 years in office, look like they've aged 10 years, or, and I can't imagine that kind of weight on you. Thinking about, sincerely, that mantle carries a lot of responsibility. Our president, with that weight, what you just said, I've witnessed personally over 18 years of growth of God, but especially in the last several years. And I can tell you, in 2011, he called me and he said, Paula, will you bring some pastors around to pray? I'm thinking about running for president, and I really want to know what God has to say and really want to hear the voice of God. We prayed for 6 hours. And think about a businessman waiting for 6 hours praying. Now, there are pastors I know that barely pray 60 minutes. Mm. And the next day, he said, went back in the office. He said, well, what do you feel God's saying? He had to make a real strategic decision at that time. And I said, I don't know if it's the right timing yet right now. And he said, I agree. And he said, please keep praying. And we did. Mm. And one thing led to another. And, he has leaned and kind of been in that position, whether it was pray for my children or pray for this or, doing Bible studies there. That was very, and has continued to be very normal. And so for me, it's been a different perspective because I haven't, I'm not looking at the persona or just what, and I will say fake news media because I've been in places and I've been like just shocked at what I've experienced sitting with them privately or in a rally or in an event or in a situation, and then what I've watched on TV, I'm kind of like, excuse me? It's crazy. So you are right. But he has had faith for a very long time, and maybe he's not out there like some people thumping the Bible, and I say he doesn't know Christianese like some people do, and he's in a different world now politically, but I can tell you that his walk with God is very real, very authentic, and very meaningful to him.
Well, I'm glad that you are here today to explain that and to talk about that. And I actually have been from day one that he announced his presidency, and I was looking at him as he's one of the ones in the primary. I've been a fan of his Apprentice show, so I watched all of the original Apprentice shows. Back then, our kids were small, and my husband and I only had like one TV show a week that we watched, and that was it. And we would watch it, and we would laugh and giggle because he every night he would fire someone, and so those were my experiences with Donald Trump. I knew he was a real estate mogul from New York, all of that. So when he said he was going to run for the presidency, I went back to YouTube and I watched a bunch of videos over the time that he was go to the city council in New York. He'd go to different 60 Minutes. All these people had interviewed him and gotten his opinions on a wide range of subjects like North Korea and our foreign policy and the Middle East. And I was surprised by how well versed he was. I also knew of his marriages and things like that. And I really wasn't concerned so much with his personal life as I was with, if he decides to run for president, what will he be like? And he seemed, although he's given money to both parties, he's been very, very much towards success as opposed to being aligned with one party. And then, of course, they announced that you were his spiritual advisor. And I've seen some news stories where you kind of have explained that the relationship didn't just blossom because he was running for the presidency. But I've also heard some really negative things about the fact that he couldn't possibly be a Christian. He couldn't possibly, And I just know that not to be true, that we don't actually know what a person's faith walk is. We can judge by the fruit,
right,
but we don't know unless we actually know that person and we hear from their own mouth. And there's been so many times, Pastor Paula, like on Inauguration Day, how many times in this country have we seen from the steps of the halls of power that kind of preaching and teaching and uplifting of the name of God and of Jesus Christ? How many times have we seen that emanating from the presidency? It's not been often.
Never. It's never. 5 people stood there, and I think this is such a statement to our president, and invoked the name of Jesus Christ over our nation. And those of us who are believers understand the power of that.
Mm-hmm.
He also had an amazing man of God, a Rabbi Hire, who's this incredible man. He is a person that he understood that our nation needed healing. And if you look, I'll never forget after he won, I walked into his office and said, Paula, you're going to pray. And I just looked at him like, he said, I want you to pray the inauguration. And it was like I was incredibly honored. And we began to discuss the details and what needs to happen in our nation. And he wanted a Hispanic. He wanted a true evangelical. He wanted a woman. He wanted an African American. He wanted a Catholic priest. And he wanted a rabbi. And he wanted to say, like, these are our Judeo-Christian roots that this nation was founded upon, and the importance of that. And he knew the importance of covering not just his presidency and the inauguration, but this nation with prayer. And over again, I can tell you about meetings that we've had, and one of the greatest things that he says, he gets to shake hands, and his family says all the time with people around the country that say, sir, I'm praying for you.
Mm-hmm.
And how much that means. I mean, I was with him. I don't know if I should kind of share this, but I was with him the other night. I was at the White House with him for the election the other night, and with FLOTUS and First Family, and it's a handful of family and friends, about maybe 50, 60 of us or so. And my husband and I were there, and there was a moment that, they were going through the states, and there was a person, and, different people were giving different, thanks to different situations. And one person talked about God and talked about their, kind of referenced heaven and stuff, and he just looked at me, and he like nudged me, and Vice President was standing next to him, and he went, I didn't know. He said, just like, he's like, man, that's awesome. Like people, I think they'd be very surprised. Again, like I'm reminded of when it went viral, the picture of us praying in the Oval Office over my head. There's something crazy or mysterious or spooky that's happening, but that's something that happens all the time. He called me up before he goes to pray at with RNC, and my husband and I were staying on the floor underneath him where the kids were, et cetera. And he called into mine at the time, and he said, where's Paula? And so I went up, and the Lord had spoke to me that morning, and I went in, and I'd been kind of locked away, and I was fasting and praying. We went up before that night, and I don't know if it was, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and they're praying over him, First Lady and Barron, et cetera. And so, again, this is a man that loves prayer. This is a man that requests prayer. This is a man that is very familiar with prayer. It's just, I think it kind of surprises me how surprised people are, and maybe that's because for 18 years I've been in the bowels and the inner sanctum of their life and seen, his true love for God and his kingdom-minded way of thinking. And I remind people, of course, he's from New York. He's got grit. He's strong. He's a courageous leader. I tell them, look at his policy, like you said, he's leaned towards righteousness, the decisions he makes.
Well, Pastor Paula, thank you so much for coming on today. And I just want to, please, when you speak to him next, let him know. Stacy on the right and this listening audience at American Family Radio, we're praying for him too. We thank you so much for your time today and for coming on and sharing just a bit of your heart. Thank you so much, Pastor Paula. We'll be back with more after this. Stay there.
does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
I used to get questions from people all the time about how I could justify working in the football world and being a Christian. It's such a violent game. What about all that bad language? How can you justify playing games on Sunday? Without a doubt, spending time in a locker room or on a football field definitely has its moments of being in the world. But I've also come to realize that God can only use us in the world if in fact we are in the world. The tension that may arise there requires godly wisdom and the Holy Spirit's leading. Stay close to God and let His wisdom and leading guide you.
New York Times best-selling author Tony Dungy, author of the popular Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
This is Marnita from The Marnita Show with Parenting Points. Ready for promotion or not? As children grow and develop, be careful not to reward them with the blessing before they are mature enough to handle it. When they are ready for the next level in life, they will exhibit behavior that is indicative of next level living. For example, you don't go to college until you finish high school, right? Children want to test the waters of their next level before they can actually manage it. They don't know that they're not ready. When they ask for their car on Saturday night, but don't normally follow your clear, simple instructions, you can reasonably assume they have a plan B. Instead of bailing them out of trouble, wait until their behavior warrants a promotion. Be the rock that's not movable by their emotions.
For more parenting, tune in to The Marnita Show, right here on your favorite station.
I'm Chad Pergram with the Speaker's Lobby. It won't be long until the House, the Senate, and President Trump may be battling over border wall funding, effort to avoid a partial government shutdown in December. Nobody quite knows what this skirmish will look like, and no one knows who will be the leaders of the Democratic and Republican parties in the House until late November or even December. Granted, it's the current Congress which needs to address the spending questions in the lame duck session before the new Congress is seated in January, but that's why everything's up in the air. House Speaker Paul Ryan insists there will be a fight over the border wall funding, but Ryan's out the door as Speaker at 11:59 a.m. on January 3rd. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell downplays the chances of a shutdown. Congress must also approve what's expected to be tens of billions of dollars in disaster aid to help relieve communities flattened by Hurricanes Florence and Michael. In fact, it's possible the need for extra hurricane assistance could make it easier to address the border wall in the next round of horse trading. With the Speaker's Lobby, Chad Pergram, Fox News.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
You would. These are interesting times that we're in. Rod Rosenstein, I was ready to question him. I had 37 pages worth of questions for him, Brett, a couple of weeks ago. Of course, he is alleged to have wanted to invoke the 25th Amendment and question the president's fitness for office. So I'm not sure that would have been the right pick, but he is overseeing the Mueller probe right now. I don't think anything's going to happen to Rod until after Mueller finishes his investigation, and then what happens after that will be between the president and Rod.
That was Trey Gowdy. And he's talking about Rod Rosenstein, who it looks like he's going to get away with not having to testify about his comments about recording the president and all of that. So I want to address something that I've seen a couple times on online social media about the program. People saying that I'm a huge cheerleader for the president. It's a bunch of cheerleaders for the president here on the show. And if you only listen to the last couple hours of the programming, then you probably think, yeah, she only says nice things. But I have criticized the president on this program, and I probably will again. And I also think maybe the reason why you're so triggered by it, if it's a problem for you, is because you have actually been listening to CNN too much. And so you're so used to hearing people tear him down that the sound of someone saying something nice about him has you're literally, your blood pressure's going up. And if that's the case, bless your little old heart. I'm so sorry for you. Like, I'm sad for you. Not permanently, but I feel a little bit of sadness for you in this moment, and I'm sure it'll pass. Like, it's gone already. I don't feel sad for you anymore. Let's go to the phones. Kevin in Ohio, thank you for calling the show today. Hello.
You got a card or anything in the mail?
Hi, welcome to Stacy on the Right. Okay, I think we maybe don't have that person. So one of the things that I think is interesting about Trey Gowdy talking about Rosenstein and the investigation is, first of all, you guys might have seen that the chief of staff for Jeff Sessions is actually his interim replacement. And of course, the Democrats are now, talking about rules. It can't be this person. It can't be someone who's not confirmed. Yeah, you know what? Yada, yada, yada. Malarkey, malarkey, malarkey. Thanks for playing this game. We're not here for it. One of the things I think is going to be pretty evident is this. He's already made a statement. His name's Whitaker. He's not recusing himself. So he's not going away. He's not going to turn away from the debacle that is the Mueller investigation. Now, we've already had, I believe it was Chuck Schumer out already talking about how the Mueller investigation is really important and we need to protect it and see it all the way through. Well, of course we do, Chuck. Oh, there's nobody over here on the right saying we need to end it prematurely. We just want to see what the report says. You can't investigate the president the entire time he's in office about Russian collusion. You have to bring it to a close at some point. So what's the report? What does the report say? The other thing I think that's fascinating is that we have, and obviously we're hoping and praying for Ruth Bader Ginsburg to recover. She fell in her office last night and broke a couple of her ribs. She's 85 years old. And I am not one of those people who is going to engage in a whole lot of, nasty comments about this woman. Ribs, when you break or fracture or crack your ribs, it is extraordinarily painful. It's even worse when you're elderly and, her mobility has been affected. And so we're hoping and praying that she will make a full recovery. So discussions surrounding that should really be just, that's what's happened and that's it. Now, I think the other part of what we're going to see happen is obviously the Democrats have already had, one of them went on television the other night and said, we're going to investigate Donald Trump. We're going to get his tax returns. Now, I've already said I have zero interest in seeing the president's tax returns because he submits on a yearly basis the 100-page financial disclosure, which is much more in-depth and telling than his tax returns. But if the Democrats want to go that way, there are other documents that the American people would like to see. American people deserve to see the chain of command and chain of documents, everything pertaining to the conclusion of the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. Yes, I'm still on that. Don't get triggered. I'm on that still, and so are millions of other Americans. We also would love to see the chain of communication surrounding the FISA application and approval for the tapping of Trump Tower. Who asked for what when? Unredacted, declassified documents telling the American people how our taxpayer funds and our employees, those career professionals in the Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Investigations, went about jerry-rigging a opposition research document to procure a FISA warrant to tap Trump Tower and to listen in on Trump associates. Also, the corresponding emails, instead of piecemealing it out to us so we can't see a clear picture, how about you dump all of it on us at the same time and put it all together in order so we can see how they were texting about stopping him while they were working on stopping him, while they were applying for the FISA application, while Hillary Clinton's campaign was paying for the Oppo research document, while they were leaking it to the media, while it was being used, that media story was being used to validate the actual original piece of reporting that brought it to the newspaper, and that was taken to the FISA court, and then they got that approved. You see? So, I mean, if we're going to have investigations, whoopee, I'm here for it. Let's have some investigations. Let's look into the Kavanaugh hearings. We already have three people, I believe, who've been referred to the Department of Justice for investigation for submitting false statements to the Senate Judiciary Committee about then Judge Kavanaugh's behavior from 1982. They lied. They did so to stop him from being confirmed. So if Democrats have already said they want to impeach Kavanaugh, I would also like to see some impeachments on the side of people who brought the false information. If you're serving in government and you're in a position where you could be impeached, then you probably should be up for impeachment if you participated in that debacle. For every action, there is an equal reaction. And that is what the president was alluding to yesterday in his speech when he said, if you want us to take a wartime posture, then launch your investigations and we'll launch ours. Remember, investigative powers that are currently loaded into the House, often those investigations are moved into the Senate because the Senate has the investigatory powers and they have the oversight over the investigatory agencies. So, I mean, if the House wants to launch a bunch of investigations, let's just have a party. Let's have one of those, you've heard of these things are called progressive parties, where the party starts at one person's house and then, so you have appetizers at one person's house, or sometimes it's just drinks, and then you go to the next person's house and you have the appetizers, and you go to the next person's house and you have, the first course or the meal. And then you go to another person's house for dessert and then another person's house for cocktails. I mean, that's an extended one, but that's what a progressive party is about. So if the progressives want to have a party, if y'all want to have an investigative party, then we can start it in the House and we can end it in the Senate, which the Republicans control. We can end it in the place where really all of the oversight is housed. And while we're doing all that, we can release the documents unredacted. The American people can read all about your malfeasance, and then we can start lopping off, not literally, but figuratively lopping off these heads of these agencies that were involved in this wrongdoing. We know there's been wrongdoing. We know there's a swamp. We can smell the stench. We see the rats running. We know everything's going on. The question is, is that the party you want to have? Because we're ready for it. We're here for it. We're here for your investigative party. Scratch a scandal, find a Democrat. We're here for you. We want to investigate you. The American people want to see what you did. We want to know what you did, and we want you to be punished for it. We don't want you to continue to run around with your fingers in the air, talk about how you're above the law and you're going to save America. How about you just try to save yourself? Let's get some investigations going. Giddy up. I'm here for it. Or you can let the president do what he is there to do. He was duly elected to do. We want him to do it. And that is for him to right this ship. So, the only other major thing that I think we may be lacking just a bit is that I don't feel like the Republicans have really got their messaging down. As much as I love talking about the tax cuts and, jobs and the economy, there are a lot of Americans who don't pay, hardly anything in tax. And so they don't care about tax cuts. And they really want someone else to pay for their health insurance. They want the government to do it, even though they don't trust the government, even though they think that the government is full of enforcers and people who want to do police brutality. They also believe, in the same brain, that the government should be in charge of their health care, because the people who are beating them down and keeping them from living their lives through the police force are the same ones they want, people related to them in charge of their health insurance. I, for one, don't want that. I don't want the government in charge of my health insurance. It's hard enough to get anything done without having the added layers of bureaucracy and people who just don't care, who'd rather see you die, honestly, so they don't have to type your name into a computer and do any work. I don't want those people in charge of my health insurance. But in order for us to make Americans understand what government-run health insurance looks like, we need some communications on that. We need some of these fantastic agencies, or they're not agencies, they're private organizations, 501c3s, and all of the different parts of the Republican apparatus to get together and make some commercials about what government-run healthcare really is. All of you documentarians out there, we need some documentaries about what government-run healthcare really is. What we need is the private sector. We need more of the kinds of things that the president has actually signed into law that no one's talking about, where he did the association health plans. He now has made it possible for people to get into groups with others in their profession and create associations and buy health insurance that way, which means your health insurance rates and premiums in the actuarial table is based on everyone who's in your actual association. So you could actually get really great rates, or your rates might be a little higher, but they'll never be higher than Obamacare. The savings are immeasurable. And we also need more people to look at and consider Medishare. Medishare, that's the Christian grouping together. It's a Christian association of people who are paying for each other's medical care bills. And it provides you the opportunity not to ever have to fund things like abortion or contraception or anything else that you're interested in staying away from. So we need more and better messaging on these things if we want to win. Because what the Democrats are doing is, and we just discussed this, but I want to re-encapsulate it for you, The Democrats have a captive audience of people who truly believe that the only way to get anything that they want is to get the government to take it from someone else and give it to them. And that's you and that's me that they want to take stuff from. And I'll just speak for myself here. I didn't get to this place in my life to want to give away anything that I've earned against my will at the force of government when I was those people. Remember, I've told you guys many times I was a Democrat once before. When I was a Democrat, I wasn't so much interested in raising taxes and stuff like that. I've always been low tax. But I did think that the government could equalize things. I know better now. You don't want the government to be the equalizer. Now, obviously, we need good laws, but you don't want the government to say, you know what, you have too much money, or you know what, I don't care if you've been working and saving for all these years. You shouldn't have that house. You shouldn't have that. You shouldn't be able to save money like that. You shouldn't be able to pay that tax rate. You should pay more. We don't want the government making those choices because it's never going to be fair and equitable. We don't want to use the power of government to take things from our neighbor or our person that we hate or want to vilify, because if the government can do that to them, they can do it to you. So we need better messaging. We do. We need more communication. And I know this is an unpopular thing to say. For a lot of people, they really feel it's a personal attack, but it's not. I'm speaking from our own personal experience here. What we have to do, above all things, if we want to change the direction of this country, is as Christians, we have to start making whatever sacrifice we have to make not to have our children in these government-run indoctrination camps. And if you're a public school teacher and you're not one of those people, then I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking about you. But for the most part, most of these suburban and inner city schools are all teaching the same curriculum, which is anti-American and anti-Christian. And that is seeping into our kids. They're there longer than they're at home with us, and they're learning things that are detrimental to the maintenance of a constitutional republic. And we're seeing that already with this current generation. They don't have enough money to get married. They don't know how a family works. And a lot of them have been raised outside of church. So they can't see the truth, they can't hear the truth. Because they've been raised to be repelled by it. And how do I know this? I keep going back to that panel, but I was quoting statistics on the panel, and they were saying, well, how do we know you're telling the truth? And I said, well, I got that information from a government website. From the Department of Justice tracks the statistics on gun crime, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we don't trust the government. I'm like, but you just said you want the government in charge of health care. These were people who were literally arguing with me from both sides of their brain. They were arguing with themselves. Because I don't have any reason to make up statistics on guns. I don't have the time to make that kind of stuff up. The truth is anathema to people who are deceived. They're not going to willingly take it. It's like trying to pour medicine down a dog's throat. They're never going to take it willingly. You have to wrap it up in some meat. That's what we're going to have to do with the truth with these people. Wrap it up in something that they like so they can understand it. We got to message better. We have to start someplace. So, oh my goodness, I hear the music. That's it. That's the show. Okay, Thursday. So I'll be back with you tomorrow, Lord willing. You guys, good night from the heartland. Enjoy your evening. God bless.